Hi, Alan Hadley with Photo Networks. Thanks for joining me for this next tutorial. We're going to be working in Lightroom 2 today and working with the tonal curve. Now, I've included the tonal curve in another video, but I wanted to take a moment and do a tutorial on really using this tonal curve to show you exactly how it works and how effective it can be on different types of images. One of the things that you need to keep in mind is that the tonal curve works on any image, whether it's black and white or color. It doesn't really make any difference. The point is that you're working with individual areas of the photograph, such as the dark areas, the highlights, the overall light, and darkness and shadows of the image. So what we're going to do is get started on a black and white image, as you can see on the screen. And essentially, what we want to do is go down to our tonal curve, and you'll see this line. Now, of course, if you notice up in the upper left-hand corner of that little box where that line is at, there's percentages. Now, that is a little bit more technical than what we really need to go into, but the point is it tells you from dark to light what the percentage of dark to light is. So for instance, if I have my cursor here, it's going to be at 4% dark all the way up to a 92% light, and it takes you across the tonal value or the dynamic range of the image. So let's start with the highlights. Now let's look at this individual jar sitting here on the floor, and if you'll notice this little specular right here, it's called a specular highlight. That is actually a highlight. That's a highlight right there. Anywhere there's a really bright area, and that's what you want to focus on. This little pebble that's on the ground right up here, that's what you want to focus on with your highlights. So let's move our highlight slider to the left, and that's going to bring our highlights down. Now, as you see, as I go across, it brings it down. If I go to the right, it's going to bring it up. You can see, like right in this area right here, and anywhere there's a light, as we come across, it's going to tone that down, and it can be quite dramatic. It just really depends on where you want the image to be and the overall impact of those highlights. Now let's go down to the lights. Now if we go to slide the slider all the way to the left, as you'll see, the whole image actually goes dark. If we go to the right, the whole image goes bright. So as you'll see, the highlights are specific, the lights are just for the whole image. So just like with the darks are for the whole image. If you go to the right, it's going to brighten the whole image. And then of course, if you on your shadows, it works the same way. So let's work with our lights here for a second. Let's bring it up just a little bit, okay? Because keep in mind, the tonal curve also affects your overall contrast of the image. It's what you're doing in the basic area of Lightroom is getting the basic tonality of your image and setting the tone of your image. Then when you come down to the tonal curve, then you go in and specifically work with different areas to fine-tune that image to make it a really strong image in all areas. So the basic is just that. It's just a basic edit. Then when you come down into the tonal curve really gets specific. And for instance, with your lights, this is working with the whole entire image. So let's find that sweet spot where it looks good to us and we don't have blown out areas. And then of course, in our darks, we can make our shadows darker or we can make them lighter. But keep in mind, in the basic area, when you were working in that, you set the tone at that point as to how dark or light this overall image was going to be. So when you get down here, then you can really pay attention to the details and fix this image exactly the way you want it. And we can go into our shadows. We can make our shadows even darker to make it a more contrasty image, or we can make them a little bit lighter. But of course, I set the tone on this image to be a contrasty image in the basic area. So when I came down here to the tonal curve, it's going to allow me to really work with those colors. And essentially, and I want to show you a couple of other things here too. If you go down to the point curve down at the bottom of this little box, okay, if you click on, right now I've got this set on linear. I can go to medium contrast, okay, and of course you can see what happens to our image. It changes, and that's a preset that's actually set in Lightroom for this particular tonal curve area. And then I can go to strong contrast, and of course it brings it down even further. So, and from this point, if you choose one of these, then you can come in and literally work with the lights and darks, and it changes your image even more. In other words, you can make it even more contrasty, or you can come back and make it, you know, less contrasty. So, but keep in mind, if you have this point curve set on strong contrast, the overall image is going to have a strong contrast value. Okay, so that's one of the things that you really need to understand about this portion of the tonal curve. So let's go back to the linear. Okay, and of course that gets us where we're at. Now, if you'll notice, our adjustments that we made in the strong contrast did not change. So after you've set your adjustments here and you change you know, your point curve, it's literally going to keep those adjustments. It's just going to make it more contrasty. So if we go to strong contrast, you can see our point curve did not change, but our contrast level did. So you can play around with this and see what what works best for you and the image that you're working on. I like strong contrast, so to me, in a lot of images that I shoot, you know, going down here to the point curve and clicking on strong contrast will give me an opportunity to really go in and make this image pop. Because you gotta understand what makes your images pop. It's the blacks and the highlights. And the midtones give it content, but the blacks and the highlights are what make that image jump off the page. And working with those particular areas really make a huge difference on your finished image. Okay, so that's the tonal curve, and hopefully you'll take the opportunity to pull some images into Lightroom and work with that and really get a feel on how that works, because it will make a huge difference in the final outcome of your images. Thanks for joining us for this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you on the next.